Hello students, this is Paradise Lost book 1 and this is part 2 of my video lecture. The book 1 is not divided into any parts. This is just part 2 because in the first part we had done the argument from where the book 1 begins. So the text begins with of man's first disobedience, and of course the first disobedience that is written over here, it means the disobedience by Adam and Eve of God's orders of not eating the fruit of the forbidden tree. So we see here that this is the disobedience that man had done, and for which and forbidden tree of course is the tree of knowledge, and because of this it brought mortality to the world, and it brought death to the world, and it brought woe to the world. And what is the meaning of woe here? It means pain. So what is the meaning of mortality? Mortality means death. So eating the fruit, the result was that man lost immortality, because God had given us immortality. We were supposed to be like angels, and it lost paradise also. And what is this paradise? This paradise is Eden. Eden, just like it is written over here, the Garden of Eden, which was supposed to be the paradise where God had placed man. And see here, and ultimately what we had lost God's grace also, of course, because God was angry with man, and it was then one greater man. And who is this greater man? This is the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who came to the earth and restored us. Restored means bringing back. So what did Jesus Christ bring back? Bring back God's grace to man. Of course, it could not bring back immortality, it could not bring back paradise, but a little bit of God's grace was brought back to us by one greater man. Greater means above normal men. And then regain the blissful seat. And now here, from here you can see I have put some bullets here. These points are given over here. This is not because the poem is in points. This is for our ease of understanding. And you, as I had explained in the previous lecture also, this initial phase from line number 1 to line number 26, it is called the prologue, or the invocation of the muse, as it is said. And the muse is here, as referred to here, the muse is the goddess of poetry, to which Milton is referring, and from which goddess Milton is seeking some blessings. And he says, "Sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai did inspire that shepherd." And who is that shepherd? That shepherd is Moses. Now you must know that from here, these lines, and also the lines in this slide, he has, if I can just mark them here, and further lines also, he has called the muse, he has invoked the blessings of the muse to help him and to guide him. So the poet is asking the goddess of poetry to guide him, because it was the one from the beginning. Now here beginning means from the time of creation, because this poem attempts to tell of the time when man was not created, when the earth was not created, and the concept of heaven and earth did not exist. So he says in the beginning how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos, or if Sion hill delight thee more, and Silo's brick flow that flowed past by the oracle of God, I thence invoke thy aid. And if you look at these lines, there are a number of biblical references like that of Sion and Siloah and oracle of God. But I would really recommend that you don't go into the details. In the previous also there were in the previous slide also you had seen words like Oreb, Sinai. These are all biblical references of hills that were mountaintops that were considered to be sacred by the Greeks, and they were considered to be where the goddesses and gods of Greek mythology dwelled, and the muse also lived on those sacred tops. So but you don't need to remember, you just need to remember that in these lines the poet, in these lines he is asking the muse to help, because the meaning of the word aid here is help, to help him in writing this poem. And look at how he calls his poem an adventurous song. Why do you think he refers to it as adventurous? Because it is epic in stature. This is not a normal poem at all. This is something which he considers to be an ambitious project. So it is an ambitious project and it requires a lot of knowledge, and it deals with the subject related to God and the creation of man. And definitely this is not just a short poem. Also, considering the length of his project, do not consider that when Milton started writing this poem he did not know how long it is going to be. Definitely he had the very idea that the project that he has picked up, it's a very lengthy project. It is a project which deals with a very difficult subject, and he wanted to equal the classical writers. I had in the introduction of the poem I had told you how he wanted to equal this work Paradise Lost with the works of Virgil and Homer and Dante. And so he says that because it is an adventurous project, it is an ambitious project, that with no middle flight. No middle flight means it is not going to be mediocre. It is quality also, in terms of quality also, it is not going to be of a mediocre quality. It is going to be of superior quality. It intends to soar above the Ionian Mount. Again, Ionian is a reference just like Siloa and Sion and others. This is a reference to the hill of God, but you don't need to remember the name. If there are names in which come in the poem and references which you must remember, I will tell you, but these are not which you need to remember. Just understand what he wants to say. He says that I wish to undertake this project which will soar high, which will have a very high quality, and things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. And see how he says unattempted, never done before. At least he is talking of English literature. Something like this has never been written in English literature, even though it has been written in maybe other languages like Greek, Latin, in Italian, but he says never been done in prose or rhyme. So prose means novels or maybe story, rhyme means poetry. So he says nothing like this has ever been done, and seeking the blessing of the muse to guide him in this project. Moving on to the next slide, and he says, and chiefly thou, and thou is again you. This is an old English word for you. He is talking with whom? He is talking with the muse. And he says, thou, O spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure. Upright means innocent and pure. Innocent and pure. And this does not just refer to one religion. Every religion definitely believes that God does not live in a temple alone. भगवान सिर्फ मंदिर में ही नहीं रहते हैं. यही बात वो कहने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि even the muse does not sustain in a temple, it lives in a pure heart. And the poet believes that his own heart is pure and innocent, and the goddess of poetry will help him. So he says, instruct me. Instruct again means the same. Guide me, help me, for thou knowest, because you know everything. The muse is the goddess and things which even are unknown to man. So the poet believes that because I am writing of God, there might be things that I don't know, but the muse would know. And hence he is asking the muse that because you know everything, you can help me. Thou from the first was present. Thou again is the same. There are so many ways in which this you word was written. You, your, yours. So you have thou and thy and thee. But they are all old English versions of the word you. So again and again they are used. He says, thou knowest, thou from the first was present. First here means beginning. So you were present from the beginning, even from the time when man was not created, you were present. And he says, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like, sattest, you sat, brooding on the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. So he says, you like a bird. Here it can be an eagle. I'm sorry. It can be an eagle or any bird which flies high. So he says, like a bird, you sat on a mountain top and you looked at the world. And you looked at the world. And if you can imagine, if somebody is sitting or at a mountain top and looking around, that bird would have, or that person would have, a view of everything in the world. It is like having a bird's eye view. ये कहते हैं ना bird's eye view, कि bird को तो सब कुछ दिखता है. तो similar, ये एक metaphor है. This is a metaphor where the poet is comparing the muse with a bird. And just like a bird flying high, soaring high, and sitting on a mountain peak looks at everything in the world, similarly, the muse at that time had the view of everything that was going on in the heaven, the earth, the universe, and in the place of God, even in hell. And here he is referring to the bird as dove, because dove is a bird which is related to purity. So I have used the example of eagle just because he means to say soaring high in the sky, but he himself has used the word dove. So here the muse is compared to a dove, and he says, just like a dove, uh, and pure soul, you are the goddess, and you knew everything at that time. And he asks her, what in me is dark, illumine. And darkness is the metaphor for ignorance. It is the symbol for ignorance. And illumine का मतलब है lighten up, because light is a symbol for knowledge. So he is asking the muse to help him. If there is any ignorance in him, the muse should help and the muse should actually fill him with knowledge. Even in Sanskrit, you might have heard the lines Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya, where tamas is darkness, अंधेरा. Darkness जो है वो अज्ञान का प्रतीक है, एंड ज्योतिर इज रोशनी, रोशनी जो है वो ज्ञान का प्रतीक है. बिल्कुल वही एक रिफ्लेक्शन इस लाइन में हम पोएट के द्वारा समझ में आ रही है. ही सेज व्हाट इन मी इज डार्क इल्यूमाइन, व्हाट इज लो रेज एंड सपोर्ट. और अगर मेरी नॉलेज कुछ कम है, इफ देर इज समथिंग लेस इन माई नॉलेज, then you need to increase it. Okay, raise means to increase my knowledge and help him and support him. To the height of this great argument, I may assert eternal providence. Eternal providence means godly help. He says this argument, this poem, it is so great that I assert, I ask for, I seek godly help and justify the ways of God to men. And this is the most important line, because this is the purpose with which he is writing this poem, this whole project, to justify the ways of God to men. He wants to tell man that God is justified in doing whatever he does. We are nobody to question him. We are nobody to think that God has done injustice, because if man is suffering, if man is living a life which has pain or difficulties, then man himself is responsible for those sufferings, for the pain, the woe. It is not the work of God, because God never intended man to suffer. Man brought upon the suffering. So for this purpose he is writing the poem, and for this purpose he is seeking the help of the muse. And we move on to the next slide, and he says, say first. So the first thing that he is, and if you look, if you see, now we are on line number 27. This is line number 27, and we had finished with the invocation, because from line number 27 to line number 36 we have the introduction. And he says the first thing, for heaven hides nothing from thy view, nor the deep tract of hell. Say first, what cause moved our grandparents? Grandparents, he is talking of Adam and Eve, the first man and the first woman, who were the parents of mankind. So he says, what caused our grandparents Adam and Eve, who were in a happy state? Why were they in a happy state? Because God had put them in paradise. God had put them in the Garden of Eden. So it was a happy state. It was a blissful state. They were feeling no pain. They were feeling no sadness, no difficulty. They were the perfect children of God. And he says, what? So if they were so happy and they were favored by heaven so highly, favored by heaven means they were the favorites of God. So if heaven favored them so much and they were living such a happy life, what caused them to fall off from the Creator and transgress His will? तो उन्होंने ऐसा क्यों किया? अगर वो इतने खुश थे तो उन्होंने भगवान की मर्जी के खिलाफ क्यों गए? And fall off means to fall from grace. Why did they fall from his grace? Why did they fall from God's grace? Why did they disobey God? For one restraint. Now this word restraint means there was just one limit. There was just one thing which God had disallowed them. बाकी सब तो भगवान ने उन्हें दिया था, एक ही चीज तो भगवान ने नहीं दी थी. He means man or human was made the Lord of the world. God had made them. God had given them everything. They were the Lord of the world, the earth. Only one thing God did not allow them, and that was to eat the fruit of knowledge. Then why did they do this? This question the poet is asking from the muse, and the poet himself is going to answer this question. He says, what was the reason? Who seduced them to that foul revolt? Foul means unholy. Who tempted them? वो कौन था जिसने एडम एंड ईव को भगवान के खिलाफ जाने के लिए टेम्प्ट किया, लालच दिया? एंड द आंसर ही हिमसेल्फ गिव्स ओवर हियर. द आंसर इज द इन्फर्नल serpent. It was the infernal serpent. And what is the meaning of infernal? Infernal means from hell. There is this word inferno, which means hell. So infernal means hell and serpent is snake. So the snake from hell, वो सांप जो नर्क से आया था, और वो कौन था? It was Satan. Definitely he is talking of Satan. वो वही था जिसने ये काम किया. He it was whose guile. What is the meaning of the word guile? Guile means hatred. There was so much hatred and bitterness in that serpent, in Satan, that the reason was envy and revenge. Envy का मतलब होता है jealousy. What was Satan jealous of? Satan was jealous of man. And whom did Satan want to seek revenge from? It was from God. तो ये दोनों काम एक ही साथ हो गए. उसने मैन के साथ अपनी ईर्ष्या का बदला भी ले लिया, और भगवान के साथ भी बदला ले लिया बाय मेकिंग हिज फेवरेट क्रीचर. अगर बच्चे को आप परेशान करो तो उसके माँ बाप परेशान ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाते हैं. उसी तरह से सेटन ने सोचा कि भगवान से रिवेंज लेने का अच्छा तरीका यही है कि भगवान ने जिस ब्यूटीफुल क्रीचर को बनाया है, अगर मैं उसे तंग करूं, अगर मैं उसे भगवान के खिलाफ कर दूं, तो it will be an automatic revenge from God. And this is what he did when he went to the Garden of Eden in the form of a serpent. And he said, deceived the mother of mankind. It was not Adam. उसने एडम को नहीं लालच दिया, उसने ईव को दिया. उसने सोचा कि ये कमजोर लगती है, इसको लालच देता हूं, और फिर उसने स्नेक बनकर सबसे पहले ईव को लालच दिया कि इस फ्रूट को टेस्ट करके देखें, द फ्रूट from the tree of knowledge. And then Eve was tempted and she asked Adam to pluck the fruit and eat it. So the mother of mankind is Eve. And now let us move on to the next slide. He says, what time his pride had cast him out of heaven. The second thing he is going to tell us about. The first thing, जैसे previous slide में था, पहली चीज इस poem में हमें पता चलेगी about the fall of man, और दूसरी चीज हमें पता चलेगी कि ऐसा क्या हुआ था heaven में. What happened in heaven which made Satan fall out of grace? कि भगवान के साथ ऐसी क्या बात हुई कि भगवान का फेवरेट एंजल जो था वो एकदम से भगवान के खिलाफ हो गया. What time his pride. Now pride is a big word over here, and pride defines Satan. Satan का एक बहुत बड़ा कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है pride. वो बहुत ही घमंडी था, और यही घमंड था जिसकी वजह से वो हेवन से नीचे गिरा. It was this pride which caused him to fall from heaven. Because he thought that he had become the equal of God. So he says, what time his pride had cast him out of heaven. What is the meaning of cast him? Means thrown him out of heaven. with all his host of rebel angels. And here host means army of angels, rebel angels. Who are these angels rebelling against? They were revolting against God. So this is what he says. This is what Milton says, that the reason for Satan falling out of heaven, the reason for Satan's army falling out of heaven was that he was proud and he thought himself to be equal in power, equal to God. And he says, by whose aid? By the aid of this army. aid ये word दूसरी बार आ रहा है. पहले भी आपने aid word मैंने पिछली slide में बताया था. इसका मतलब होता है help. With the help of these rebel angels, he wanted to set himself in glory above his peers and equal to the most high. Above his peers का क्या मतलब है? Peers होते हैं बराबर वाले. Here peers means the other angels. So he thought, Satan thought himself to be above the other angels and equal to God himself. Most high यहाँ पर किसके लिए यूज हुआ है? God के लिए. God, the poet calls God as the most high if he opposed and with ambitious aim. And what was this aim? The aim to take the throne and monarchy of God. So here the poet, which means Milton, depicts God as a ruler over the throne of heaven, and Satan is the one who wants to take that throne. He wants to become the king himself, and he has this ambitious goal of taking the throne, raised impious war. And here impious means unholy. The war against God is unholy, and he says Satan raised this war in heaven and battle proud. Don't think that this is spelling is wrong. It is just the old English spelling. That battle happened. It was a proud battle. It was a battle. And he says vain attempt. What is the meaning of vain attempt? Vain means unsuccessful. It means something which did not yield any result. And even though he made this attempt of taking over the throne of heaven, he was unsuccessful. He failed. He failed against the power of God. And how did God punish him? God punished him by throwing him out of the seat of heaven, and he fell into hell. Now let us move to the next slide. And he says, him the almighty power. Almighty means all powerful. All powerful God. And him here he refers to Satan. Him the almighty power hurled headlong, flaming from the ethereal sky, with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition. So he says, and when Satan fell from heaven, he fell like a shooting star. The whole army of devils, the whole army of rebellious angels, now they are devils. Earlier they were angels. Okay, before I move on, I have a question for you. This information, if I hope you know this, that Satan, when he was in heaven, he was called by what name? What was the name of Satan when he was in heaven? Because Satan is the name he acquired when he started ruling hell. When he was in heaven, he was called Lucifer. This was the name of Satan when he was the closest, the most beautiful angel in heaven. So it was Lucifer. So Lucifer, when he was thrown out with his army, They went down like shooting stars burning in the sky. So it was hideous ruin and combustion. Combustion means fire. So like fire they fell down from the sky, from heaven, and in the universe they fell and fell as if they are going to fall forever, because it is bottomless. Hell has been described in the Bible as bottomless, जिसका कोई तला ना हो, जिसका कोई अंत ना हो, वो जगह hell है. And they fell down for time immemorial. And then when they found themselves in hell, they were punished to live there, to dwell there in hell, bound in chains and burning in fire forever. So he says to dwell in adamantine chains. Here the word adamantine is a metal that is unbreakable. So he says when Satan opened his eyes, he saw himself in a river of fire, penal fire. Penal means punishment. It was a fire which was punishing him and his army. And he found himself in chains. These chains were made of a material that could never be broken. This fire was a fire that would never exhaust itself, that would never be put out. ये कभी ना बुझने वाली कह सकते हैं एक फायर थी, ये कभी ना टूटने वाली चेन्स थी. And the whole army was punished to live in that fire forever, bound up in chains. And who durst defy the omnipotent to arms? ये वो आर्मी थी जिसने इतना हौसला दिखाया. They defied. Just don't be confused with the spelling, because these are old English spellings. Defy means revolt, protest. जिसने हिम्मत दिखाई गॉड के अगेंस्ट जाने की, गॉड punished them in this way. Arms means war. So they had the courage, they had the strength to fight God, and God also had the strength to punish them. 9 times the space that measures day and night to mortal men. Mortal men means human. For God and for angels, time had no significance. It had no meaning. Time तो इंसान के लिए होता है. Time is something, it is a concept made for man, because man is mortal. तो उसका समय शुरू होता है और उसका समय खत्म होता है. पर समय जो है, it is not meant for gods and angels, because वो अमर है. उनके लिए कोई कभी समय शुरू भी नहीं होता है और कभी खत्म भी नहीं होता है. सो ही सेज अगर इंसानी समय से नापो तो 9 दिन और 9 रातें. 9 times the space that measures day and night to mortal men, he with his horrid crew lay vanquished. वो इसी तरह से 9 दिन और 9 रातें उस रिवर ऑफ फायर में अनकॉन्शियस पड़े रहे, यानी कि बेहोश पड़े रहे. ही यहाँ पर किसकी बात हो रही है? ऑफ कोर्स सेटन की. और हॉरिड क्रू यहाँ पर सेटन की आर्मी की बात हो रही है. ले वैंक्विश्ड मीन्स वैंक्विश्ड इज अ कॉमन वर्ड विच मीन्स डिफीटेड. आपने सुना होगा, यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड दिस बिफोर. ले वैंक्विश्ड मीन्स दे विल ले डिफीटेड, अनकॉन्शियस, बेहोश, राउलिंग इन द फियरी गल्फ. फियरी गल्फ मीन्स दिस रिवर ऑफ फायर. They laid in that river of fire, confounded. Confounded means defeated, though immortal. अब वो मर तो सकते नहीं थे, चाहे वो कितनी भी तकलीफ में हो, however much they are in pain, however much they are suffering, but they are yet immortal. We must not forget that even though they have been thrown out of heaven, they still have the powers of the angels. And because they are supposed to be immortal, तो वो तो एक और भी बड़ी punishment है कि they are suffering, but the suffering would never end because they are immortal. And let us move on to the next slide now. Milton is looking at Satan, giving us the description of Satan who finds himself in greater pain and in a situation of distress. He says, but his doom. What is the meaning of doom? Doom means his destiny. His doom reserved him to more wrath. The suffering was not yet over. There was more wrath. The meaning of the word wrath here is anger. There was more anger of God that he was yet to suffer. So his destiny was going to make him suffer even more, for now the thought of both lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. So see, he is not just tormented by what is pain. Pain is not just physical, pain is mental also. So he is suffering from physical pain. Why? Because he is burning with fire, and he is going to suffer with more mental pain also. Mental pain also. Why? Because he will compare his glorious past with his tormenting present. So he is suffering badly right now, and he is not only suffering from physical pain but also with mental pain, because he is thinking of his lost happiness and lasting pain. See the comparison. In his past there was just happiness, there was just angelic virtues, and now in the present he is suffering, and his future also contains suffering. This pain is lasting. What is the meaning of lasting? Lasting means permanent. So that thought torments him. It is the mental pain which torments him more. And he says, round he throws his baleful eyes. And round he throws his eyes means that he looks around at the place where he has landed. And what is around him? Is it a beautiful sight that he can see right now? No, he can only see darkness, and he can only see his hopeless future. This is what he can see around him. He looks around, he throws around his baleful eyes. Here, baleful again means full of pain. That witnessed huge affliction and dismay. And not only can he see the hell around him, but also he sees his whole army, the army which had the strength of the gods, the army which was angelic at one point of time, the army which had supported him even against God. So he is looking at that army, and in the situation that they are almost unrecognizable. पहचान में ही नहीं आ रहे हैं उसके अपने साथी, वो ऐसी हालत में है. So all of this is causing him more and more mental pain. So he says his eyes that witnessed huge affliction. Affliction means pain. Affliction means trouble, and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast hate. So how many emotions is Satan going through right now? So many emotions he is going through right now. Let me create some space, and so that I can write, I will just get rid of this. So we are talking of Satan's mental state right now, and Milton has captured it beautifully. Satan has just got up, Satan has opened his eyes, and he is not only physically suffering, he is mentally suffering, and the emotions that he is going through, they are so mixed. He is definitely in pain, he is definitely in terror. Also, he is feeling dismay, which means sadness, and he says at the same time his hatred is more than ever. And against whom? This hatred is definitely against God and his pride that will never leave him. So all these emotions are coming to him together at once. As far as angels can, he views. Here angels can means angels eyesight. Remember, he is not a human being. He has the godly qualities, and as those godly qualities allow him, a human being only has a limited vision. Because, but he, having those qualities of a god, of an angel, he can look around and see as far as he wanted to see. And when he looks around him and his eyesight allows him to look so far off, he views the dismal situation, waste and wild. और जहां तक उसकी आंख जाती थी, as far as he could see, the only thing that he saw was it was like a desert. It was like a destroyed island. It was a ruin. Hell had no hope. It had only wasteland, and it had only darkness. It was a dungeon, horrible. Of course, you have heard of the word dungeon before. A dungeon means a prison. This was a prison specially. This was a prison specially created by God. This was a prison that could hold a criminal, an unholy person who could challenge God, and it was a dungeon which was fit for Satan himself. So, that kind of a place this was. A dungeon means a prison. So, it was a horrible prison on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed. And here, look at this simile. Look at this simile. And I'm calling this a simile because Milton has used the word as for comparison. So this is not a metaphor, this is a simile. Here it is a comparison between hell and a furnace. What is a furnace, by the way? A furnace, जैसे हिंदी में भट्टी कहते हैं, a furnace is a place which is lit with inflammable materials, and it burns to really high temperature, and a furnace is used for melting metals. So we can imagine what a hot place, with high temperatures, furnace would be. So hell has been compared to a burning furnace because there were flames everywhere. He himself is lying in the river of fire. अभी तक वो वहां से उठा नहीं है. He has not got up yet. And all around him he can see burning fires, and he feels as if this dungeon, this horrible prison, is specially made for him, and it is like a furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible. Look at the beautiful description again. I say how thoughtfully, how minutely Milton has presented this picture. he says there are flames everywhere. और जहाँ आग होती है, आग से रोशनी निकलती है, पर ये कैसी आग है? What kind of flames, these are, that there is no light anywhere. So it is burning, and yet it is darkness. So it is a great irony. You can say it is a great irony that there are flames and yet no light. So the darkness makes the situation even more horrible, even more hopeless, and it is adding to the feeling of pain and terror that Satan is going through right now. And he says it is almost darkness visible. So darkness, it is so dense that you couldn't see darkness and nothing else. I'm going to end my video lecture over here, and let me see you in my next video lecture. I hope you are understanding this. Thank you very much.